I'll start off today. Thanks everybody for coming back. We've had just a great turnout for these. So basically what you're looking at here, this is a slide from yesterday when we went through the care and handling post-harvest pyramid. And I just put a nice little line there where we left off yesterday. So yesterday was sourcing, temperatures, we covered sanitation, and we just covered the hydration part of flower processing, rotation, and foam use. So we'll finish the top of the pyramid today. And just to reiterate some things from yesterday, and I think a lot of this will be a lot more, what I want to say, applicable to today's talk is make sure you have a system for your chemical use. If you have products in your stores and we're going to try and get you to use them right, it really makes a difference. So we're going to move on to the next step after the hydration step, which is flower food. And what is in a flower food? So all flower foods that you purchase have these three products in them. One is a sugar, which if you listen to Gary yesterday, the sugar provides carbohydrates, which helps replace the photosynthesis process, an acidifying agent to help lower the pH, which helps uptake of the flower of the solution, and then stem unpluggers that stop the growth of bacteria and fungi in the vase or the foam or wherever you bucket, wherever you're using it. So if you remember from yesterday, I said if you can eat it, bacteria can eat it. And that's why we strip the leaves under the water, because you can eat leaves, you can have a salad, and you can have sugar, and think about orange juice. So all these things are things that bacteria can feed on. So you need these three ingredients in perfect balance to optimize your flower life. There's two main flower food solutions that are used in the marketplace. There are what we call professional solutions or holding solutions. They have a little bit less sugar than a base solution. So at Floralife, we label all of our storage or holding solutions in the 200 family. So if it has a yellow label and a 200 on it, it's a holding solution. If it has a 300 on it, it's a base solution. So the holding solutions are used at cold temperatures to use in the cooler where the synthesis of the flower is a little lower and you can get by with less sugar. Base solutions are used obviously for sending out bases at anything that's at room temperature. So my position is if you're going to use one solution, you should just use a base solution. It can be used both in and out of the cooler. And the nice thing about a base solution is that it has the optimum sugar. And one of the things that you'll notice when you fully load a flower with optimum sugar is that you'll get better color out of the flowers. It will enhance the color. And we have a slide with some different percentages. You might even see it in those pictures. And I liked also to get the flower fully hydrated with a good amount of sugar and carbohydrates in the flower when I send it out to the consumer, where I have no clue if they're going to take care of it well or not. So if you're going to pick one solution for your shop, just use a base solution. And why should you use it? I think this is probably one of the better pictures that can tell you why the use of a flower food is very important. And there was a study done by Ohio State University. It's many, many years old. But they said that almost half the flower shops in the country at that point did not use a flower food, and there was a high percentage that didn't use it correctly. So when I'm looking at a competitive advantage against the person down the street, just measuring and using a flower food makes me highly competitive against my person down the street that I'm competing with. And as a lot of us know, 7 days has kind of become the benchmark for arrangements in the home. And you can get 7 days in the home, and we talked about sourcing yesterday. You can get 7 days in the home through cultivar selection. But a lot of us know that the flowers that people want in their home are going to need a little help to get to that 7-day boost, and the flower food is the way that's going to happen. Many of you know about our Express flower food. I want to touch on that. Express came out a couple years ago, and it is the first flower food on the market that eliminates the need to cut the stem. It is pretty revolutionary, so it's been quite an adjustment for a lot of people to get used to this. But I wanted to put this slide up to show a test that we did in our labs with 3 different flours, showing the difference between using the Express 300 without a cut, with a cut, and then our current formulation, cut Flour Food 300. So the product really, really does work. And I know it's kind of a sea change for people, but it does eliminate in the processing step a lot of time and labor. Obviously for stem insertion and design and things like that, you're going to cut the stem anyway. But the main benefit for this is in the processing step. So how do you use it? We have tested major crops, but we haven't tested everything everywhere. That takes a lot of time. We've done all the major crops. We still recommend a cut on hydrangea, gerbera, stock, and sunflower. And it's always good to test a variety if you're unsure. And it never hurts to cut a flower when using Express. Oddly enough, one of the most asked question I got when this came out is, can I still cut the flower? And the answer is absolutely. Dosing. I hope that everybody comes away from this talk knowing how important it is to dose correctly. So in this picture here, we have different percentages of flour food, and you can see the results here. And I've drawn a couple circles to highlight a couple things. So if you look at the flours from 0 to 50%, when you look at the red roses specifically at 100%, you can see the color difference in the rose itself. So you can see what I was talking about, how flour food will actually enhance flower color in the home. The other thing, aside from the flowers not living on the left there, you'll see on the right when you overdose, what you can get, the first thing that you'll notice is that you'll get crispness of the leaves and you get some burning on the leaves there. Overdosing has less downside than underdosing, but we definitely do not recommend overdosing any more than we would recommend underdosing. Underdosing becomes a bigger problem. If you remember the first 3 ingredients that I talked about, is that you put 2 things in the water that bacteria loves, and then not enough to counteract the process that they might have to feed on. So how do you dose? Operationally, you all have business models, you all have different setups, and there's a couple ways to do this. We offer dispensing systems to customers if they're interested in them. I've shown 2 of them here. The one on the right is an injector system that's been used for years in the marketplace. The one on the left is what's called a blend center. It's a Venturi unit, a much smaller and more compact unit. It's about the size of an iPhone in the width and the height of it. And it can be put under a sink. It can be hooked up to a faucet pretty easily. So these are really nice to put into shops where you have a smaller footprint and don't have the room to do things. So, you know, people will say to me, well, I can't afford a dispensing system. And I guess I get that. And maybe if you don't have the plumbing set up to do it, but I've seen people spend $2,000 to wrap a delivery van, but they can't find $50 to $100 to $200 to install a dispensing unit. I guess I've never really understood that math. But in the event that you can't do that, here's just a really simple way to measure in your shop. You have basically 2 scenarios. You have one where you have buckets and the other where you have to fill vases at the shop. So the first little scenario here would be to measure how much water goes into a bucket and then take a yardstick and mark the yardstick. So without any real investment, you can measure all your buckets properly. And this is much better than trying to mark, 35 buckets in your shop to the right amount. So I'll save you a little trouble here. If you're using these 2 buckets that I've got the picture of, I can tell you that a large Percona bucket with 4 inches of water is 2 gallons, and the small with 3.5 inches of water is 1 gallon. So you would take maybe one or 2 yardsticks, mark them correctly, mark them with some electrical tape, and you can use that as your measuring tool. For vase arranging, the best way to do it is to get a 1 gallon container and pre-mix your flower food before you start your day. So maybe you get 10 of these jugs, and at the beginning of the day, you just fill the jugs with water and put the proper amount of flower food in and put them on your design table and fill from there. Usually when I go into a flower shop, I'll see people with a jug of crystal clear on the tabletop with a pump. They'll have 6 vases there. They're all different sizes, and they put 1 pump in every vase. And probably not doing the right amount of measuring. So this method allows you to get the right amount of measuring for your vase arrangements and for your buckets. And at my sister's shop, she has a dispensing system, but the system itself is over in processing, and it's about 30 or 40 feet from where the designers are. So they actually fill jugs from the dispensing system and walk them over to the design tables when they start the day. So however you figure out a method to do it, as long as you can figure out a way to measure correctly, you'll be way ahead of the game. So just some other processing notes that we talked about yesterday. Water quality does affect your flower life, and we do offer testing of your water at Flora-Life. Foam, we'll talk about foam in a minute, but you want to make sure you soak your foam in flower food. You want to change the tub regularly. We'll talk about all that in a bit. Daffodils should not be put in, or should be put in water, excuse me. And that sapping out that they do when you put them in water to kind of release that is always there. So you understand that will affect the life of other flowers when you mix them in a flower arrangement. Softened water will negatively affect flower life, and you don't want to use purified water, as we talked about that yesterday. And we do have special blends that are available.